in the grimy industrial city of Cleveland, Ohio. In 1866, a time when most sensible Brits were enjoying the refined pleasures of Victorian England and avoiding anything resembling American innovation, a humble bookkeeper named Henry Sherwin was about to make a decision that would change the very walls around us. 24-year-old Sherwin, with absolutely nothing but $2,000 to his name, his entire life savings, mind you, decided to invest in a local paint wholesaler called Truman Dunham Co. Clearly, the man had either remarkable foresight or a spectacular lack of better ideas. 4 years later, in 1870, having evidently developed a taste for paint fumes, Sherwin convinced two mates, Edward Williams and a certain Mr. Osborne, to each put up $15,000 to become equal partners in a new venture. They called it Sherwin Williams Co., and without the slightest hint of modesty, Sherwin himself took the position of first chief executive officer. The cheek of it! One can only imagine Sherwin at his desk, twirling his presumably magnificent mustache and declaring, "Gentlemen, we shall cover the earth with our product," a slogan they would, rather alarmingly, actually adopt some decades later. Now, in those days, if you wanted to paint something, you had to be practically a chemist. One had to purchase various ingredients and mix them oneself, like some sort of alchemist, but without the excitement of possibly turning lead into gold. But Sherwin and Williams had a revolutionary idea. What if paint came ready to use? Absolute madness. In 1873, these paint pioneers introduced what they called guaranteed strictly pure raw umber in oil, which, despite sounding like something you'd use to embalm a mummy, was actually the first ready-mixed paint on the market. The public, who had apparently been waiting for generations to avoid the faff of mixing their own paint, went wild for it. But the innovations didn't stop there. In 1877, Sherwin-Williams patented the first resealable paint can. Yes, before this, one presumably had to use an entire can of paint in one go, or watch it dry out like yesterday's scones. The mind boggles at the wastage. One suspects the Queen herself might have raised an eyebrow at such ingenuity, even if it did come from the colonies. By 1884, the company was officially incorporated in Ohio, with sales agents already established in New York and Chicago. That same year, Sherwin-Williams made the rather forward-thinking move of hiring Percy Neyman, the first chemist ever employed by an American paint manufacturer. Imagine tethering someone who actually understood the science of what you were selling. Revolutionary. The company began expanding faster than a Yorkshire pudding in a hot oven. In 1888, they purchased the Calumet Paint Company in Chicago, marking their first plant outside of Cleveland. By 1892, they had merged with Walter H. Cottingham Co., establishing their first international presence in Montreal, Canada. The British Empire was nervously taking notes at this point, one imagines. Then, in 1905, came the moment that would define their corporate identity for generations to come. Sherwin-Williams debuted its iconic Cover the Earth logo, replacing their previously used chameleon logo. Yes, a giant paint can pouring red paint over the entire globe became their corporate symbol. Not ominous at all, that. The 20th century saw Sherwin-Williams continuing to innovate with the determination of a British queue jumper being stared down by pensioners. During the Great War, their coatings were used on some of the most historic flights of the era, including Charles Lindbergh's first nonstop solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean. One assumes Lindbergh was grateful his plane wasn't literally covered in paint, as the logo might suggest. The Second World War brought material shortages, forcing further innovation. With oil in short supply, Sherwin-Williams created Chemtone in the 1940s, the world's first water-based interior paint. Paintbrush materials were also scarce, leading to the invention of the first roller brushes, another industry standard today. Nothing like a global conflict to spur a bit of creativity in the paint department. Post-war, the great housing boom of the 1950s drove demand through the roof, resulting in one of the best eras in the company's history. By 1964, when Sherwin-Williams stock was listed on the New York Stock Exchange, the company had 1,850 branch offices and 33,000 dealers. Its sales that year reached $313,500,000, with profits of $17 million, making it larger than such minor companies as Gillette, Merck, Xerox, or Pepsi-Cola. Not bad for a chap who started with just his life savings and an inexplicable passion for paint. However, the 1970s brought challenges. The rise of discount stores like Kmart, Target, and Walmart meant retailers could sell Sherwin-Williams products at whatever price they liked, sometimes at half off to drive traffic. Combined with inflation raising ingredient costs and the rise of aluminum siding for houses, the company's revenues stagnated and profits declined. Rather like discovering your tea's gone cold just as you've sat down with a biscuit. In a panic, new management tried everything: investing in new plants, building a large research center, testing larger stores called Decorating World, making questionable acquisitions, and even dropping the renowned Covers the Earth logo. To finance all this, Sherwin-Williams went deeply into debt for the first time in its history. The result? The company's first billion-dollar sales year in 1977, but also its first loss of $8 million. Oh dear. Enter Jack Breen, a new CEO credited with bringing the company back from the brink of collapse. Under his leadership, Sherwin-Williams returned to its core business and began a remarkable turnaround. The recovery continued over the decades. By 1992, Sherwin-Williams opened its 2,000th store. In 2006, it opened its 3,000th. By 2013, sales topped $10 billion. Rather impressive growth for a company that began with a bookkeeper's modest investment. Today, Sherwin-Williams delivers paint and coating products worldwide, employing more than 64,000 people and operating in over 120 countries. The company now has more than 5,000 company-operated stores in the United States, Canada, the Caribbean, and Latin America. That bookkeeper from Cleveland would likely be chuffed to bits. In 2017, Sherwin-Williams acquired Valspar, the largest acquisition in the company's history, expanding its global footprint even further. And in 2020, the company announced plans to build a new global headquarters in downtown Cleveland, Ohio, maintaining its presence in the city where it all began over 150 years ago. So, the next time you're slapping a coat of paint on your garden shed or touching up the skirting boards, spare a thought for Henry Sherwin, the bookkeeper who took a $2,000 gamble and created a company that truly does cover the earth. Not literally, mind you, that would be an environmental catastrophe of biblical proportions. But in the world of paint, Sherwin-Williams reigns supreme, proving that sometimes the most colorful success stories start with the most ordinary of beginnings. And that, dear reader, is no whitewash.